Hey, what's up, guys? This is Mark. Sorry, it's been a little bit. Kind of had some stuff going on, but back to talk about fantasy football again. So right now I'm doing a mock draft again. I'm doing a 12-team mock draft, but I'm doing a standard league this time. So in the last video that I did a mock draft, then I did it in a PPR format. So now I'm going to be going to the standard format. And basically, in case you're not really familiar with fantasy football, the standard format and the PPR format are very important formats in terms of what you're going to be looking for in the draft. It places different values on different players. So basically in the PPR, you're getting a point per reception. So it's basically going to make the receivers a lot more valuable, putting more weight on your running backs, your quarterbacks potentially. But what it also does is it puts a lot more weight on touchdowns. So there are certain players that are going to get a lot of receptions that'll be valuable in more valuable in PPR, but that are not going to have the same value in standard. So example guys like that are a lot of slot receivers. So like Julian Edelman, Cole Beasley has been like that for the Cowboys, although he hasn't really been great in PPR. But a lot of points get taken away from some of these running backs that are receiving running backs like Christian McCaffrey. Kind of brings him down to a level closer to some of these other running backs. Another guy is Tariq Cohen. He loses a lot of his receptions because he's more of a PPR type running back. Things like that. So, and the general point with this is that those are the main differences between standard and between PPR. So it kind of changes your perception of how you're going to rank these players. So what I would do is, and I'm drafting 10th in this, so it's going to kind of change what I do a little bit. But the key thing to know is that basically you still use the same tier format that I demonstrated a couple videos ago. If you're not familiar with that, go back and watch that video. It's called Draft Strategies. And but you're kind of in your head. You can kind of play around and create a different tier for standard. And the whole point is that you create that ranking. I give my opinions, but you gather and then you create that little tier based on that round of the guys that you want to take from that previous mock draft. So that's the big takeaway. I'm sorry I didn't really get to it too much of the time. But yeah, so the draft just started. I'm drafting 10th. So Saquon Barkley is the one that just got taken off the board. So I'm going through my notes right now. I'm trying to look at the guys that I want. So basically, I'm going 10th. The guy that I would want to get that could potentially fall to me is Michael Thomas. I think even in standard, I think that's going to be pretty valuable for me. If I really wanted to place more emphasis on running backs, I might go with Todd Gurley though, because that's a lot of, especially in standard leagues, that's a lot of value. So it might be good to do that. But if I draft Todd Gurley, I really have to make sure that I take Darrell Henderson too, in case of any risk potential. So the guy with the second pick is taking up the whole clock. Maybe he left the draft. I don't even know what's going on. But he's taking his time, probably thinking between McCaffrey and Kamara. And it is a tough one, but I mean, I like McCaffrey, though, because I think he's going to get a lot of touchdowns in that system. There really isn't much else to prove from these guys on that team. And he took Christian McCaffrey. So I think that was good. That's what you want to do there. Now the next guy is going to take somewhere. He's going to either take Kamara or Elliott, and it's going to continue on down the board. So, those tiers, you can basically kind of keep the notes on that and then carry it into the next draft. So especially if you know what league format you're going to do, in my league, I'm going to do with my friends, I have a 14-team PPR. So for my preparation, I'm going to do a lot of 14-team PPR mock drafts, and I'm going to get my tiers for each round and get an idea of what I'm going to do, so that way I can prepare for that. And then, if you know what your format is, if you know how many guys are going to be in your league, you can kind of start doing your homework now, because there's a couple weeks left, and you got some information from the preseason that'll kind of help you. So, yeah. And, the preseason, I don't usually put a whole lot of weight on it. I'm kind of going off track because these guys are just crawling along in this thing. But, basically the preseason, I only look at the injuries, really. I think that, the schemes are all kind of out of whack, and, you don't know, the teams aren't really playing defense particularly well either, so it's just kind of, it's kind of hard to go off the value. Just kind of pay attention to, if guys are really doing bad, or if they're injured, because that's kind of the thing to watch out for. Don't pay attention to great performances per se. All right, so another guy just auto-drafted. Oh, he took DeAndre Hopkins. Why would you do that in standard? I mean, I would have taken some of these other guys, to be honest. So I'm going to change this. So they took DeAndre Hopkins. That was kind of a surprise. And then they took Alvin Kamara, Zeke Elliott, David Johnson, Devontae Adams, Le'Veon Bell, and Michael Thomas. So this is a tough call. So the ones that I'm on the clock now. I've got a couple options here. They're telling me to take Julio Jones. Todd Gurley is also there. Melvin Gordon, but he's fallen all the way down to 12 because of his trade situation. And then you got Travis Kelce, Joe Mixon. That's a tough one. So do I want to take Todd Gurley or Julio Jones? I do like Julio Jones in PPR a little more, but there's just so much potential in Todd Gurley, but it's also a lot of bust potential. But thankfully, because it's a snake draft and drafting it at 15, there's potentially could fall to me there. So what do I want to do? That's a big question. In standard, I mean, you got to prioritize one of these running backs, and James Conner is also there. So there's a risk in Todd Gurley. Do you run the risk of that, or do you take the more solid receiver? And this is a gutsy call, but I'm going to go with Todd Gurley because Julio Jones did not score a lot of touchdowns last year, and there's a risk that he might not again this year. So I'm going to take Todd Gurley, and I'm going to make sure, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start queuing the other players that I think can. I'm going to make sure to queue Darrell Henderson because that guy is just like, you have to make sure you have him if you're going to take Todd Gurley. So that's what I'm doing right now is I'm making sure I get his handcuff in the fold in case anything were to happen to him. And his range is around 87, so that kind of puts me in the idea of like when do I want to take this guy? Because this is potentially huge value for me as the draft goes along. So the next guy's taking his time again. So as a rehash, the first round was Saquon, Christian McCaffrey, DeAndre Hopkins in a very surprising move. I wouldn't have even done that in PPR. I would have taken Kamara over him and Zeke Elliott, to be honest. But Zeke Elliott has his contract issues as well. Then you got David Johnson, Devontae Adams, Le'Veon Bell, Michael Thomas. I took Todd Gurley and then Julio Jones, and then now this guy's kind of taking his time in the last pick. And once again, I apologize. It's at 8 minutes right now, and once again, these people are not going fast through this thing at all. But so the next thing that I'm going to want to do is I'm going to kind of play this thing by ear, but guys that are of interest to me that are still left on the board are Joe Mixon if he falls to me. And okay, so a big flurry of stuff happening. This scroll is not going automatically down, so I have to drag it down to see what happens. So Odell, Dalvin Cook, I don't really like that pick very much. Then they took Travis Kelce, and then now it's back to me. So I've got a choice between taking Melvin Gordon, Joe Mixon, Tyreek Hill, Juju, James Conner, Antonio Brown are all the ones there. I really like Melvin Gordon, but I don't like that trade situation. There's so much uncertainty, especially since I already got another very uncertain player on my team as well. Same thing with Tyreek Hill. I mean, he's not suspended right now, but I mean, with all the access to social media, you never know how that's going to go. Juju is there. I've taken him a lot, though, but he's not going to fall again. James Conner is solid. So do I take... There's a lot of options here that I could go with. And I'm thinking the guys that are going to get the touchdowns. And... So there's a lot of potential for Juju touchdowns, James Conner touchdowns, or Joe Mixon touchdowns. And in general, I do like James Conner slightly more than I like Joe Mixon. So I'm going to take James Conner. So I went with two running backs because it's standard, like you have to. So in one of the videos, if you remember, I talked about the prioritization of receivers versus running backs because how there's only a few elite running backs and the receivers are relatively even. So, but then there's a big drop off after 30, which makes sense because once you get past the team's number one receiver, it's a little more muddled after that. So, but in standard, it's different because in standard, there's more points on running backs. So you want to make sure you get those good running backs right away. So after I took James Conner, they took Melvin Gordon. And I would take Melvin Gordon higher once he actually figures out what team he's going to be on or if he's even going to play. And then somebody took Juju, Nick Chubb, Joe Mixon, Tyreek Hill, Antonio Brown, Mike Evans, Keenan Allen, Leonard Fournette, T.Y. Hilton, Amari Cooper. Picks are going by quick. Zach Ertz. So a lot of stuff is going on right now. And if Adam Thielen falls to me, I think that's what I'll take because he is up there. And he, I think, has a lot of potential. There's other guys that I like, such as George Kittle, but I think he's probably going to get auto-drafted before he gets to me. There's other guys that are interest to me, like Stephon Diggs. Brandon Cooks, maybe. And then you start getting into some of these other running backs that move up as well, like Aaron Jones could be good. Like Marlon Mack, maybe Josh Jacobs, but I don't know about that Oakland line. There's just like a lot of issues there. A guy that I like that I'm going to be coming up near is Chris Godwin, so I'm going to go ahead and put him in the queue because he's somebody that is of interest to me. I also like Kenny Golladay there as well. And I don't really understand what's going on. There's so much. I don't like these new ESPN formats, man. They keep changing everything. All right, so Devonta Freeman gone, George Kittle gone, Kerryon Johnson gone. So there's 3 picks ahead of me, so probably if everything falls into the fold, I'd take Stephon Diggs. And then after that, there's a pretty significant receiver drop-off. Or do I want to take a running back and then get a running back flex? And if there's a sleeper running back that I would want to take, I think it would be Aaron Jones. But... And that's the thing is that with standard, you had to place these running backs ahead of them, and Aaron Jones is a breakout guy. Somebody took Patrick Mahomes in the 3rd round. That's discouraging. Man, these guys don't watch my videos. I mean, at least it's standard, though. Like, Patrick Mahomes could be an elite player because of all the touchdowns he throws. So that kind of gives you something, I guess. So, receivers, do I take Brandon Cooks or Stephon Diggs, or do I take one of these lesser-tier running backs? I do need to start getting around to receivers. I wanted Adam Thielen. But at pick 39, I think I'm in a good range to get Kenny Golladay. Or maybe even a guy like Brandon Cooks or Stephon Diggs if they fall to me. Of these guys that are left, I mean, Brandon Cooks, Stephon Diggs, Aaron Jones. I don't really know about the problem with Cooks and Diggs is because they're both pretty inconsistent players, and you want a very consistent wide receiver 1. So I'm going to go with the running back here because I think that there's more points, and I'm going to go with Aaron Jones. So notice that this is the opposite of what I did a couple drafts ago, where I took 3 receivers first. I now took 3 running backs first. So what happened after that, it was Stephon Diggs, Brandon Cooks, Josh Jacobs, and Derrick Henry, which is conveniently the next 3 are left because all these guys are auto-drafting. Man, I hate when you enter these drafts and then like this kind of stuff happens. But so the next guy that's on the board, the guys that I'm interested in, and these are guys that I'm potentially looking at receiver 1s, are Kenny Golladay and Chris Godwin. And those are both solid breakout candidates. A lot of people like those guys. But I'm going to personally go with Kenny Golladay. And the reason why is because he's more of the wide receiver 1 on that team than Chris Godwin is. Mike Evans on the Bucs is more of their red zone target. And in general, like Matthew Stafford is by far a better quarterback than Jameis Winston, who is honestly kind of just trash if you think about it. So I'm going to take Kenny Golladay. So Kenny Golladay is my first receiver off the board now. I took him, and then after that it was Marlon Mack, Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, Tyler Lockett, bust potential. Alshon Jeffrey, Chris Godwin, Chris Carson, bust potential. Damian Williams, also bust potential. Mark Ingram, Mike Williams, James White, Sony Michel, Kenyon Drake, DJ Moore, Tyler Boyd, Sammy Watkins. I don't know what the hype with Sammy Watkins is. David Montgomery. Allen Robinson, that was a dumb pick. And then it's back to me. So, unfortunately, because all these are auto-drafting, I don't really have a lot of time to think through this stuff. So the guys that they're telling me to take that are around this range are a series of receivers to include Calvin Ridley, A.J. Green, who's falling. A.J. Green's all the way to 58 that's very surprising to me. They also got O.J. Howard and Evan Ingram are decent tight end options. But they're going to probably be there at 63 because I'm one of the later picks, so I got 58 and then 63. So I'm personally going to take Calvin Ridley. I think there's a lot of potential there for him. And that's the one that I should take in the order, and that's what I'm going to take. You know, Calvin Ridley, the guy was already I think he was close to a top 20 receiver, and he had some very bad games last year. So once he gets consistency and that offense kind of develops, now that they don't have Sarkisian as their coordinator, like there's a lot of potential there. So now the next pick that I should be taking, so they're telling me the next one that I should be taking is Philip Lindsay. After Calvin Ridley was A.J. Green, Evan Ingram, Terry Cohen, and Lamar Miller. I don't like Lamar Miller because I think Duke Johnson might even be better than him at this point, and he's going to, especially in PPR, I think Lamar Miller is going to lose his value. Why do they have Hunter Henry at 67? Man, that's just stupid. All right, so Philip Lindsay, I could take him, but he'd be on the bench. Sterling Shepard, yeah, but he has a broken thumb, and that team is just trash. So I like O.J. Howard's potential, and I think that's not bad, especially here in the 6th round. So I'm going to do that. I get shore up that position. And I've taken O.J. Howard a lot, but there's a reason why I do that, and I talked about that a couple videos ago. And I'm just going to do it again because I'm buying the hype train on this guy, or therefore the lack of it, because nobody ever talks about him for some reason. And I took O.J., Hunter Henry. Somebody took Deshaun Watson. Then Philip Lindsay. Aaron Rodgers, who's auto-drafted. So the ESPN hype violated one of my rules yet again. Darius Geis, Matt Ryan. Sterling Shepard, Andrew Luck, Jared Cook, Jarvis Landry, Miles Sanders, Tevin Coleman, Austin Eckler, Robbie Anderson, David Njoku, William Fuller, Delaney Walker, Cam Newton. All right, so what next? So I'm back up, and it's hard to process a lot of this stuff, unfortunately. So I got Todd Gurley, James Conner, Kenny Golladay, Calvin Ridley, O.J. Howard, and Aaron Jones. I'm happy about that. That's pretty good for a standard roster. Darrell Henderson is coming up soon, and he's going to be at pick 87, which is the pick that I should be picking at. There's a lot of auto picks before me, so I'm pretty confident he will still be there. I've got to now take somebody that's before him. The guys that are before him are Dede Westbrook, maybe, Marvin Jones. I would do that, but I already have Kenny Golladay, so like why take one receiver at the expense of the other? Christian Kirk, but there's also questions there. I don't like Dante Pettis. I don't like Corey Davis or Emmanuel Sanders, nor Royce Freeman. Not a lot of good options there. Man, that sucks. Well, and since I already have Aaron Jones, it's kind of pointless in trying to take another one. I think the one that's got the most potential out of that group is Dede Westbrook, because especially the volume load. So I'm going to go ahead and take him. He'll kind of fill my bench position. And that should hopefully leave Darrell Henderson to come to me. And yes, he's there. So after it was Dede Westbrook, it was Carson Wentz, Marvin Jones, Christian Kirk, and Dante Pettis. And that pretty much leaves me. Rashad Penny is interesting. I actually like Rashad Penny's outlook more, but I have Todd Gurley, and if I have Darrell Henderson, like that is key. So the biggest takeaway that I think you should take in this video, and this is going to be my advice for especially those of you drafting late in the first round, is if you take Todd Gurley, you have to take Darrell Henderson. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. If you don't get him, you have to figure out a way to get a trade to also get Darrell Henderson. Don't give up Todd Gurley. you have to get Darrell Henderson, and you have to get him early. So, but avoid all that potentially if you can draft him. And I'm going to do that right here. I'm going to draft Darrell Henderson. So Darrell Henderson is on my team, and basically he covers me in case anything were to happen to Todd Gurley. So that way I could still kind of plug in like one of these other guys. So since this is standard, like you have to start looking at quarterbacks potentially. Or you could kind of keep building up on those running backs because frankly you can never really get enough running backs. This is not auto-scrolling down, but Royce Freeman left. Corey Davis, Vance McDonald, Emmanuel Sanders, Baker, Rashad Penny, Nyheim Hines. I don't understand Nyheim Hines' hype. Duke Johnson, that's an underrated pick, especially since he's now on the Texans. Potentially could take that job. LaShawn McCoy, Peyton Barber's trash. Eric Ebron, that's overrated. Latavius Murray and Austin Hooper's trash. Jordan Howard's trash. Curtis Samuel's trash. Cortland Sutton is trash. There's a lot of trash going around here. Kiki Kuti, okay, and then Larry Fitzgerald, well, he's going to become trash soon. So, the next on the clock, the ESPN's telling me to take Dak Prescott. That's just dumb. So, there's not really a lot of receivers left. So, what I'm going to do here, and there's a couple different ways you can go about this. So some interesting receivers. They got Michael Gallup, that's a maybe. Dante Moncrief, well, he's supposedly coming into his own, but I mean, I think that's more of Deontay Johnson's job, which I already kind of talked about. James Washington, same deal. And then, but I like Geronimo Allison. I think that's a good receiving backup to have. Another guy with potential that could kind of step up into that system. So I'm going to take him. I think, especially if anything happens to Devontae Adams, like Aaron Rodgers is such a good weapon to have. Dante Moncrief went off the board, and somebody took Dak Prescott, Michael Gallup, and Marquez Valdez-Scantling. So, what do I do? So I'm kind of in the position now where I could take some more running backs, or I could take a quarterback. Man, there's a couple different ways I could go here. So, if you go back, the last video I talked about guys you could start in week 1, and two of them are there, and then trade. Two of them are there, Drew Brees and Russell Wilson. So I could do that, but what I would rather do is kind of wait and then take Lamar Jackson because of the rushing values that I could get in standard leagues that would be beneficial. Or Mitch Trubisky is also pretty much right next to him. So, but instead you look at the running backs and like things drop off significantly after pick 120. Then it starts going into the handcuffs. So what I'm looking at is guys that like could step in and like don't have the starting job right now, but the opportunity is there because their current starter has questions. And the one that stands out to me is Ronald Jones. Yes, he had a bad year 1. Didn't really adjust well to the NFL, but a lot of potential, and he has Peyton Barber in front of him. And I think that as the season goes along, I think this guy can kind of figure out where he is. So, I like Ronald Jones. I'm going to go ahead and take him here. That just gives me more running back depth. And they don't start out against great defenses per se, so it kind of gives me some time to let my roster fill up. And I'm sorry, guys, I'm not really going up against anybody, but the point of this is getting the strategy right. James Washington, Deshaun Jackson, Drew Brees. Oh, my God. Why would anybody take the Jags defense before the Bears defense? Like, that's just absolute tomfoolery. Ben Roethlisberger, that's dumb. Russell Wilson. I always want to say Russell Westbrook. Kyler Murray, Carlos Hyde, Jared Goff, Matt Breida, Jalen Richard, Deion Lewis, Bears D. Why would you take Tom Brady over Lamar Jackson? Like, that is stupid. Justin Tucker, Bills D, Vikings D, Rams D. So they're already starting to take the defenses away. So the one they're telling me to take is Lamar Jackson, and I actually kind of like that because you look at there are some skill position players there, but the way this draft is going when you're in these auto draft positions like this, they start filling the needs first. And I usually say don't fill the needs because it's like the NBA draft. Like the Grizzlies took Ja Morant because he was the most talented player. They didn't jump down to take like one of these other guys like that had questions about them that were in the positions they needed. And then they traded Mike Conley, and they got decent value out of that. So you're trying to do the same thing. Like, you take the skill position players, don't reach quarterbacks. But here, they're taking those first because it's ESPN and it's computer doing stupid things. So in this situation, I'm going to take Lamar Jackson just because I need a quarterback, and they're going to start. After that, it's guys like Derek Carr and Kirk Cousins. So I'm taking Lamar Jackson for the value. But just in general, like, take the overall talented player first. Don't fill a position on your team. Like just perfect example right there. They took Greg Zuerlein, and it's only in the 12th round. Like, that's high for him. Somebody took the Patriots defense. Like, that is also very stupid. But then again, this is the computer, so I can't really fault any people for this being stupid. It's just more of the computer being stupid. A lot of stupidity, but whatever. They're telling me to take Anthony Miller. That's a dumb pick. So let's look at the skill position players. They're not really giving me much time to think, unfortunately. And then now it's lagging. All right. Perfect example of modest gains versus potential. Like, you have, like, Anthony Miller ahead of DK Metcalf. Anthony Miller has had opportunities already to prove himself and hasn't stood out. Like, the guy that I'm looking at that has a lot more potential there is DK Metcalf at pick number 127. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take DK Metcalf. The other guys around are Jamison Crowder, maybe, and then Golden Tate, but he's suspended. So I'm going to go ahead and start with DK Metcalf, who I think is more of a long-term investment. And then the picks are going to go through. I'm going to try to rattle them off as quickly as I can before it comes back to me. Anthony Miller, Will Lutz, again, way too high. Jamison Crowder, Golden Tate, Saints D, Kenny Stills, Chargers D, Colts D. I mean, those are not bad defenses, but it's high. Titans D, Albert Wilson, that is not a good pick at all, especially in the standard. Jordan Reed, Trey Burton, Greg Olsen, that is, oh my goodness. Harrison Butker, way too high. N'Keal Harry, like that, I don't like that either. Steven Gostkowski, Deshaun Hamilton, Kaimi Fairbairn. So I'm going to be getting a kicker at the end, and I'm going to be playing that off matchups, but, all right. So they're telling me to take Parris Campbell, and I actually really like that because, that's another, like, guy, especially, like, my team is running back heavy with the elite guys. I took them early. You want to try to find the guys that are going to give you the more potential flyers at the end in these standard leagues. And the guys like that are Parris Campbell, who's got a lot of opportunity in that offense. They don't really have a clear number 2 receiver right now. And there's a lot of opportunity for a speedster like Parris Campbell to step in. So, I mean, I like Adam Humphries too, but that's more of a PPR play, I think. I think Parris Campbell is more of that deep ball threat. Could potentially get a good, a long bomb or two in week 1. Maybe because they'll have their defense focus more on T.Y. Hilton and then leave him out for long gain. So the pick they're telling me to take is Parris Campbell, and I agree. I think that's good. I'm going to go ahead and take him. That gives me another receiver with potential on my team that I like. So so now I'm down to the last 3 picks, and basically, like, what I'm going to try to do, and I don't even think he's gone off the board yet, and this is what I want to make sure I get, is Kareem Hunt. So I'm going to figure out where he's at on this. He's got to be somewhere, man. Like, he's way too high. I can't queue him, though, because they're telling me to draft him. But he's going at 185. So do I prioritize the defense or prioritize Kareem Hunt? Well, okay, so 2 guys that are standing out to me that are here are Devin Singletary and Kareem Hunt. So Cleveland just traded Duke Johnson, and they don't really have any clear path behind Nick Chubb, but it gives me Nick Chubb's handcuff, essentially. But there's also Jaylen Samuels, which is also another good handcuff to have since I have James Conner. That's tough. So I would usually take Kareem Hunt because there's a lot of upside with trade there. But in this situation, I'm going to take Jaylen Samuels because, like I said, I'm pretty confident with my running backs. I got Todd Gurley, James Conner, and Aaron Jones. That's a pretty good mix for the top 3. And then I got, some potential. I got Ronald Jones. I got Darrell Henderson as a backup. handcuff, and I'm going to take Jaylen Samuels as my other handcuff. Because basically it's covering my top 2 picks there. I've got the handcuff for both those guys, and that's basically the most value that I'm going to have on this team anyway. So why not get the guys that you know are going to back them up? Only got a few minutes left in this video. Parris Campbell got taken by me, and then it was Adam Humphries, Robbie Gould, Mitch Magic, and then it was Mike Badgley. Then I took Jaylen Samuels. Then John Brown. That's a very underrated pick. I really like that. Adam Vinatieri, Brett Maurer, Dede Samuel. That guy, that's pretty low for him. I like that value. Marquise Brown. Also another good flyer. I'm not too big on him, though. But Mohamed Sanu, that's an okay play. More PPR, though. Paul Richardson, I don't know. Traquan Smith, watch out for that guy. That's a good flyer to take at the end. Mark Andrews, no. Jack Doyle, maybe. Jameis Winston, I don't understand why people are high on him. Phillip Rivers, Giovanni Bernard, Devin Singletary, good potential. Chris Thompson, don't forget about him either, especially if you're in a PPR league. Kalen Ballage. Mike Davis is also another solid guy to watch out for, but he's also kind of more just like stopgap baseline value. Jimmy Graham, no. So thankfully I don't have to worry about that. So I've got to fill my defense and my kicker. So what am I going to do? There's a couple options I could take, and I'm going to basically, because I'm taking these 2 at the end, I'm going to play the matchups. The ones that they're facing in week 1. And if you remember from my previous video, like, the Baltimore Ravens have a great matchup because they're playing Miami, which is got Fitzmagic at the helm, which is just a recipe for disaster, potentially. So, for that offense. So I'm going to go and take the Ravens D because that's that matchup. I think the Ravens are going to swallow them and create a lot of turnovers. And I like that as my pick to go because I'm playing that as the matchup. Maybe I can get some good value out of that and then trade up with some of these other guys. And then the kicker. So what do I do at the kicker position? So I'm trying to find the guys that I think will have good value there. So some interesting matchups. Matt Prater. They play Arizona. That's okay. Jake Elliott plays Washington. They have a good defense, so that's questionable. Mason Crosby. That's not bad, actually. The Bears, they might have to settle for field goals there. Ryan Succop. So for the matchup purposes, what do I do? Chris Boswell is sitting there. He's a little kind of low. So I'm going to go with the matchup here. And I think that I foresee a situation where in the Cleveland game, Tennessee, there's a lot of questions with Marcus Mariota. There's a lot of questions for their receivers. I think Cleveland is going to actually hold them to a lot of field goals. It could be a good game for the